This is Conversations. My name is Timothy Levine. I'm here at the Mount Tabor Lounge in Portland, Oregon with our guest, James Westby. James, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you're an editor, director, producer. What did you do before you became all of those three things?
I kind of started pretty early. I mean, not with regard to like, making Super 8 films all through elementary school or anything like that, but I did make Super 8 movies. Actually, that's not true. I did make Super 8 movies with my stepbrother in elementary school.
Okay.
Not all throughout. There was just a short period there where that was kind of fun.
Right, right.
I mean, it was always fun. It's just complicated because you had to buy film and get it processed and things like that. But I really got bit by the movie bug just, by going into video stores and obsessing about horror films.
Okay.
And just having all of them at my disposal, at least, I mean, nothing compared to, I'm sure, even a Redbox today. My little video store was, was pretty small and limited selection, but the horror movies really spoke to me. And it was by virtue of that I got into this business, for sure.
So you not only patronized the video stores, but as I understand, you used to work at them.
Yeah, I started working at video stores when I was about 19.
Okay.
And over the course of 20 years, I worked at 10 different video stores.
10 different video stores.
Yeah. And that was definitely my education and, the way I kind of came out of my shell, started talking to people.
Right. Did you just keep watching all their stock and you had to move on to another store, or?
Strangely, when I worked at video stores, I worked at the First Stop Video on Barber Boulevard, which is a really good store. And then I worked at the one on Hawthorne, and then it became a Blockbuster.
Okay.
And actually, you were asking me earlier, I'll cut to that now, about the Blockbuster stuff that I have in my house right now.
Right.
Making this documentary, I'm recreating my First Stop Video on Hawthorne as it turned into a Blockbuster.
Oh,
I'm doing
during the transition.
Yeah.
From mom and pop to corporate.
Yeah, because it happened and then I left a month later, but it's pretty funny, the things that they had us do and the things that have figured pretty prominently into my film that I'm making now. The whole Blockbuster Hollywood Rise and Fall is its own section of the movie.
I bet.
So I spend a lot of my time, at least yesterday and tomorrow, I'm interviewing nothing but former Hollywood video executives.
Wow, I bet there's lots of stories.
There are. I keep building. It could be a movie on its own, but I don't want to make that movie. But it is a huge component of it, and it's a fun. I mean, it's ironic the way that they wiped out so many little mom and pops, and then were completely decimated themselves.
Right, right. It's
by
karma.
Well, yeah,
it's a shame though for everybody involved.
It is, yeah. I'm sad when I see those, those dilapidated Hollywood videos all over the place. Well, Rid of Me it premiered at Tribeca, and then it played at Michael Moore's festival, and that was awesome. That was unequivocally the best festival experience ever, because Michael Moore gets, he's a member of the Academy, and his festival gets something like 50 grand from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and, is that how it goes? Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Yeah. And so filmmakers just get put up in these elaborate suites, and
that's why it was cool.
And I got my own driver and stuff. It was rad. and I like to temper that by saying I couldn't pay my rent at the time, so it was really nice. It was like I don't know. It was kind of like Fantasy Island. But that movie played the festival rounds, and then at Tribeca got noticed by Phase 4, which is a pretty cool distributor. They'd made independent films that I'd actually seen. Right, right. So that's kind of my barometer sometimes for would I want to even bother with this or do it myself. Right. But the movie is actually doing well. iTunes and On Demand and Showtime alone, the movie. It made its initial investment back, and we got an advance, which is I've never heard of happening for a movie of this magnitude or of this low-fi magnitude. Right. So that was exciting for sure. The auteur, if it had a rating, it would be probably unrated or NC-17. I don't think it would even get an NC-17.
For what reason?
Well, massive nudity in sexual situations. The concept of that movie was to make a slick romantic comedy. It looked like a regular romantic comedy, but then had bursts of porn in it. Right. Not porn, but sort of porn. And because of the pretend porn element, it limited its audience as far as regular distribution. In fact, IFC Films wanted to buy it, but they had a deal with Blockbuster, Rainbow Media, and they couldn't.
They couldn't buy it
unless I removed some of the ejaculation from the end of the movie, which is the best part of the movie. I mean,
it's the money shot.
Yeah, it's several money shots. No, it's the movie in the film is called Full Metal Jack-Off that he's having the premiere of, and it's 8 guys stranded in Vietnam. They're lost, and they eventually have a circle jerk.
Right, it's an art film. And
semen flying everywhere.
Nice.
So
all right, I was going to ask you what are your good ingredients for making blood, but maybe I'll ask about semen.
Well, Ron Jeremy plays himself in the movie. He showed up on the first day of the set.
Again, you work with A-list celebrities only.
I know. Storm Large, Ron Jeremy, Art Alexakis. But anyway, he gave us the recipe for fake jizz.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't remember what it was in. It was great. It was like white makeup and milk and eggs or something.
Let's talk about Portland actors and casting and where you look for your people.
Yeah, well, it's usually a combination. I mean, with feature films, let's say the last 3 feature films, which have taken up most of my life, and probably taken several years off of my life. Not probably. It's been a combination of either writing something for someone and then the little parts here and there, little scattered mini parts, you cast for those, or just, call up friends and ask them if they got any ideas. Right. Usually the best casting moments come out of meeting somebody personally rather than looking at a tape from a casting office.
Right.
Although sometimes, obviously that works really well too. But I find that getting to know people or just sitting down with them is more important than any kind of cold audition.
So you know how you're going to work on camera.
Yeah, and you can find out if people are mean, if people are assholes that you don't want to work with. I would rather, although I don't know, that's true. Some actors are amazing. They're horrible people. They're so talented.
Get good work out of them.
Yeah, and I mean, my best friend in the world, Malik Malkazian, was the lead in all of my films up until Rid of Me. And he's, like I said, my best friend, but he's awful to work with. And he'll admit it. He doesn't like the process. He's very just negative and just mad all the time, even though, sometimes being catered to, which is hilarious. But he's worth it because he's fucking good. He's so good. He can nail anything, and he just turns it on. He's like Robert Mitchum. He doesn't really study. I mean, he did study, but he's one of those actors that just does it. I mean, although, unless there's an accent or something involved, then he, prepares that way. But there are a lot of actors here that not a lot of people know about. In fact, I learn who they are every day. Especially with these workshop films I've been doing, some people catch your eye that you had no idea. They don't even know how talented they are, some of them. And then there are other people who work their asses off who are never going to be able to look realistic on screen. It's just the way it goes.
Right. We were talking about acquisition of talent in town. We were talking about the the talent pool in Portland. It's pretty darn good. I just went through a producer's workshop, and we were learning about how important it is, especially if you're selling your product to a distributor, to have superstars behind the camera too. Do you use your same crew, or do you have people you like to work with on set? In terms of if you have a movie, it behooves you to get a lot of people that are really great behind the camera.
Oh well, so, yeah, definitely. I mean, Rid of Me doesn't really count because I made it like a home movie. It was literally 3 people, and I was just shooting the crap out of it like a documentary, as I mentioned, and just grabbing shots here and there. But that was 20 days of shooting, and 2 years of editing. So.
And you mentioned your documentary. The one you're working on now is about video stores. It is the Great American Video Store Documentary.
That's right. I worked in video stores myself for 10 years.
Okay.
A total of 10 years. Probably over the course of 20 years, really. I should get that number right. But I worked at 10 different video stores. Oh. That's what it was, 10 different video stores over the course of 20 years. Over the course of 20 years. That was rough. Anyway, yes, I have a kind of a real personal connection to video stores, and I don't know why I didn't start making this movie earlier, but now that they're almost all gone, at least all the chains have gone, I've really, really involved myself in that world. And for the last year or so, I've gone to New York and Los Angeles, and a lot of shooting here in Portland. I just went up to Seattle to Scarecrow Video, which is the greatest place on earth.
Are they still alive? Or
they're still alive, but as I found out during the interviews, that no, they're not. They haven't made money in years.
Right.
but it's like a church, you know. It's
right.
But the whole idea of the rental industry is so ridiculous, or at least it's so archaic. You know, a lot of kids don't have the, well, many kids today don't have the kind of aesthetic, you know, the connection to, you know, like collecting albums or collecting DVDs or laserdiscs, any of that stuff.
Or to have a tangible product in your hand.
Yeah, people are fine with the ones and zeros in cyberspace, but I'm not. So part of it is my own nostalgia for video stores and loving the aesthetic of them, and, you know, browsing, like the browsing experience, and just anything to do with, you know, the community that a video store has around it, and the kind of conversation that happens between two people, or more than two people in a video store environment.
Analogous with record stores too, and what happened?
Yeah,
what happened there.
Same deal. But also as a filmmaker, my Rid of Me is on DVD, but it's on, you know, Amazon DVD, which they make per order, I think.
Right.
Which is fine, but the idea that my movies aren't sitting in a video, although Film Geek is, and the auteur is in some capacity, but the idea that DVD is dying and isn't really a tangible method of, you know, a format anymore. It is to me, of course, and probably to you, but it's sad. And so I wanted to make a movie about it.
Excellent. Hot in the Zipper just came out. That's a short you were working, a period piece?
Yeah, it's funny. I make a lot of movies, and some of them don't really get released until after the other ones are completely finished. So that was a short that we shot in 2011, I think. Yeah, just kind of in between a bunch of things.
Right.
And I conceived it to be shot all in one take, which is 18 minutes long.
Okay.
So it was kind of like live theater, but with a really, really complicated, you know, we were on the Fisher Dolly and had a really complicated, you know, the cameraman was really, I don't know how, Kevin Fletcher, who shot it, was really actually perfect on the last take. We did 8 takes total. But there was a lot of camera work within this, you know, lots of dialogue and no cutting whatsoever.
Very Hitchcockian.
Yeah, well, it all takes place in one room, too, in New York in 1947.
You must have storyboarded that one.
Not so much storyboarded it as just worked it out in slow motion with the actors and with the camera.
Right.
Because there was only this, you know, this much space. But oftentimes somebody will say something, it has to whip pan to the other person, then do a perfect lateral tracking shot with, you know, that kind of stuff. It seems.
You need to rehearse.
Yeah, and it developed eventually kind of organically, I think. I don't know if that's, I didn't want to use that word, but yeah, it developed organically with the actors and with the camera, and by the 8th take, it had been pretty perfect.
8 takes?
Yeah.
For an 18-minute movie, that's pretty cool.
Well, and by the time there's a character that comes in at like the 13-minute mark, and me not being a theater person at all, live theater person, I was frightened, just waiting for something to screw up.
To mess up, okay, right on. What else should we talk about that you'd like to talk about in terms of things you're doing now in the future?
Well, I spend most of my time, you know, editing other people's work, or I get hired to do videos and things for people. But I spend most of my time raising money for features.
Nice. I
have a horror movie that I wrote back in 2007 that I've been trying to get financed for about that long. Okay. And it's not even that ambitious. I mean, it is, but it's set in 1978 in Hollywood.
No zombies, I hope.
No, okay, God, no. It's about a special effects man on a slasher film. So it's not really, it's not a horror movie like a supernatural horror movie at all.
Excellent.
It's just, you know, it's more in the vein of Taxi Driver, I would say, but a horror film. And the guy is he's pretty messed up, the main character.
Do you have actors in place for this? Anybody you're looking for, or?
I've got some actors in mind for it, but it would be, I mean, it's a slightly bigger project. It would be, you know, it's 6 digits. Nice. The budget would have to be at least 6 digits.
Right. Are you thinking about staying in Oregon when you're shooting?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, well, for that movie in particular, I'm going to shoot the exteriors in Medford, which looks just like the Valley in 1978. It really does. I mean, there's certain neighborhoods that are, and you know, they have all the mountains in the background. It looks so similar, and it's perfect. And I'm going to shoot the interiors here in Portland.
Excellent. That's one of the cool things about Oregon is that you can make it look like, you know, a beach, a forest, urban, rural, whatever you need. Yeah,
the fact that you can drive to Mount Hood in like, you know, less than an hour and have a completely different look than you would get, you know.
You want snow? We got snow. You want water? We got water.
Totally. But most of the all my efforts are being put into the documentary because it's so much a huge job of editing. I've already been shooting, and I'm shooting the whole thing myself and editing it all myself. And it's fun and hard to keep track of everything.
I bet.
I mean, it's a blast, but it's just a lot of work.
It's part of the fun of it, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw some of the pictures on Facebook of the set you're constructing for the documentary.
Well, that goes back. I'm writing a script as I'm editing, which is weird.
Oh, so you are really juggling everything at once.
Well, I mean, I'm writing a script for the documentary.
Okay.
As I'm editing it, which I didn't really, I've never done a feature documentary before, except for as an editor, which, you know, was a great learning experience. A movie called Haunters. You should check it out if you ever see it. Haunters,
Haunters.
That's right.
And what's Haunters about?
Well, it's a documentary about, Bird McDonald and Brian Johnson were the directors, and they hired me in 2002 to edit that film.
Okay.
And it was over 300 hours of footage.
Wow.
And I would recommend that to anybody who wants to make movies, is to edit documentaries.
Okay.
Or documentary material, whether you shoot it yourself or somebody else does.
It's a nice way to get your
because
feet
I learned Final Cut Pro on that movie for sure.
Okay.
And that led right into me editing Film Geek after shooting it. Just because you have your hands on, you have so much material at your disposal, and you have to create a story out of it. Oftentimes with nothing but just people talking about all sorts of things, where you just have to kind of force yourself to kind of write a story with the editing. So I would totally recommend that.
Good way to get your feet wet.
Yeah.
Right on.
Totally.
And off camera, we talked about special effects, and we talked about working with Christina Cordum.
I have yet to do a real special effects movie, except for this upcoming one, which I'm not sure what it's called. It was called The Woodcutter.
Okay.
And then it was called a bunch of other things. I don't know what it's called now. It turns out there's a novel called The Woodcutter. Now I want to change the name.
Oh, so they had to change it.
Yeah. Anyway, it'll have an appropriate title eventually. But Christina Cordum, the local special effects woman, is going to work on that. We've only talked and fantasized about making the film, but it'll happen soon.
Right. You talked about body parts and.
Yes, it was mostly about body parts.
Well, it's interesting working with people on that side of it too. I got to work in their studio for a while, and it's nice to work on both ends, in front of and behind the camera.
Yeah, and talking to her actually, and this film in general, because it's about special effects, it at least 1970s special effects.
Right.
It made me think that my first kind of demystification of movies was watching the making of Michael Jackson's Thriller when I was in 6th grade.
I remember that.
Which also I rented from the video store, which was a big part of my life and has remained. But yeah, watching the behind the scenes was just eye-opening.
Right.
It showed the whole making, whether it was the designing of the sequences or the special effects was of course the most exciting part. But yeah, there's another piece of useless whatever.
Your presence online, are there any websites you'd like us to disseminate or get out there?
I only have my Vimeo page.
Your Vimeo page.
I mean, there are definitely websites for, and that becomes a huge component of every film.
Right.
It's so hard to track. I don't know how anybody does it. I mean, I'm a big fan of doing everything myself, or at least with a small crew of people. But yeah, keeping up with a website is the hardest thing. But Rid of Me has a website, ridofmemovie.com,
Nice.
and my Vimeo page is just my last name.
Okay.
After saying Vimeo.com and then / my name.
/ your name. All right.
Yeah.
With Conversations, this is Timothy Levine and James Westby. A special thanks to Chick and the Mount Tabor Theater here in Portland, Oregon. Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.